In the quiet hours before dawn, when the house holds its breath and even the clocks seem to move with care, a single verse travels softly across the lips of millions. It is a verse learned in childhood, passed from mother to child, a verse that rests on the tongue in moments of fear, in hospital corridors, and at the bedside of a worried parent. Ayat al-Kursi. We know it by habit, we know it by heart. We reach for it when darkness feels too heavy and when anxiety knocks at the door. Because of this closeness, many of us have come to treat it primarily as a shield, a dependable spiritual lock against harm. And truly, the Prophet of Allah PBH taught its value and protection. There is blessing in that practice, yet there is a quieter truth, often missed when we recite in haste. Before Ayat al-Kursi offers comfort, before it guards the night and eases trembling hearts, it does something far deeper. It introduces us to Allah Himself. Not through lofty adjectives or human descriptions, but in Allah's own terms, a concise unveiling of His essence, His authority, and His knowledge. Remember the moment between the Messenger of Allah, PBH, and the companion Ubay ibn Ka'b. The Prophet asked which verse in the Book of Allah is the greatest. Ubay answered without pause, Ayat al-Kursi. The Prophet, PBH, placed his hand over his chest in approval, a quiet, intimate affirmation that the truth had been recognized. The greatness of the verse is not in ritual, it is in the reality it reveals. Picture yourself alone under a vast night sky. The stars are distant lamps, the world feels fragile, and your breaths sound louder than usual. In that space, Ayat al-Kursi is not just a talisman, it is a lantern showing you who holds the lantern. It does not promise comfort as its first word. It declares reality, the one who lives without beginning, who sustains without fatigue, who knows without limit. So tonight, when your lips move through this verse, slow down. Let meaning settle in the chest, not merely pass the tongue. Ask yourself, am I seeking only refuge from fear, or am I seeking to truly know the one who grants refuge? That choice changes how we pray, how we trust, and how our hearts find lasting peace. Open on a long book, the longest chapter of the book, its pages turning like the breathing of a community learning how to live. Surah Al-Baqarah is not a random collection of words. It is a school for the soul, a map for people learning how to walk between guidance and responsibility. In its sentences, you hear counsel, warnings, laws, stories of nations who rose and fell, and an unrelenting call to choose truth over ease. Somewhere near the heart of this surah, after calls to listen and live rightly, after reminders that guidance comes with accountability, the verse we call Ayat al-Kursi stands like a doorway. It arrives not as a legal ruling or a historical anecdote, but as a sudden, clear declaration about the one who gives the guidance and will hold people accountable for how they respond. Imagine the structure of Surah Al-Baqarah as a steady climb. The surah begins by distinguishing clear guidance from doubt, by giving us principles for belief and behavior. It speaks to the individual and to the community, how to worship, how to judge, how to forgive, how to resist temptation. Each teaching presses on responsibility to act, to remember, to reform. Then, at a certain point, the music of instruction pauses and a different kind of note is struck, a verse that turns the conversation toward the ultimate speaker, the Lord of Guidance Himself. This is the significance of Ayat al-Kursi inside the surah. It functions as both anchor and hinge. As an anchor, it roots every prescription and every warning in the reality of one who is fully present, fully aware, and fully in control. As a hinge, it swings the reader from human duties back to divine sovereignty. The laws and stories are meaningful only because they unfold under the authority of one who knows and sustains all things. Feel the emotional weight of that placement. When a believer reads the laws, a shudder of unease may come, the sense that God sees every intention. That unease is not meant to terrify, it is meant to orient. Immediately after the moral and legal instruction, Ayat al-Kursi comforts and corrects. It reassures the heart that the one calling you to responsibility is himself never distant or forgetful. He is the ever-living and the sustainer. This is not abstract theology, it is the spiritual context that gives courage to obedience and solace to the conscience. For the companions of the Prophet and the earliest readers, this verse was a summation. Guidance must be followed because the guide is absolute. Accountability will come because the knower is complete. For us today, living in frantic times, the same pattern remains healing and clarifying. We read rules and feel burdened. Then we read AYAT AL-KURSI and remember who carries the weight of the cosmos and who judges with perfect knowledge and mercy. So when you encounter this verse inside Surah Al-Baqarah, slow down. Hear it as more than a protective phrase. Hear it as the surah's reminder. The instructions you are given are not arbitrary. They come from one who knows you better than you know yourself. How would your obedience, your fear, and your hope change if every decision began with the awareness of the one who both guides and sustains? Begin with a close-up, a palm pressed to the chest, a hush in the room, and the simplest of questions asked by the Prophet of Mercy, PBH, a question that points to the heart of revelation itself. Which verse in the Book of Allah is the greatest? It was not a test of memory, it was a teaching moment. The companion before him, Ubay ibn Ka'b, may Allah be pleased with him, one of the best versed in the Qur'an, answered quickly and without show, the words of AYAT Al-KURSI. The Prophet PBH placed his hand gently over Ubay's chest and said with quiet joy, "May knowledge delight you, O Abu al-Mundhir." Pause on that scene. The Prophet's PBH approval was intimate, not a public proclamation, but a soft seal placed upon understanding. It tells us something profound. Greatness in the Qur'an is not measured by eloquence or length, but by the way a verse opens the soul to reality. Why did the Prophet PBH call AYAT Al-KURSI the greatest? Because this verse does not merely speak about God, it introduces God in his own terms. It begins by naming the one who deserves worship and then unravels his attributes, the ever-living, the sustainer, the one whose knowledge spans every hidden thing. It refuses to let the reader drift into abstract piety. Instead, it places the believer before a living, knowing, and sovereign Lord. Imagine hearing that verse after a day of moral questions and religious duties, after being told what to avoid, what to do, how to pray, and how to judge. Then, like a clear proclamation, AYAT Al-KURSI arrives and says, "This is why those duties matter, this is who commands them." It is as if the Qur'an lifts the curtain on the one who ordains the path and holds the map. The emotional weight of the Prophet's PBH gesture, his hand on Ubay's chest, is also a lesson. Knowledge in Islam is not a trophy, it is a light that settles the heart. The Prophet's touch celebrated insight that steadies faith. When a believer truly recognizes the reality AYAT Al-KURSI reveals, fear becomes tempered by trust, responsibility becomes meaningful, and obedience becomes a response to a known caring Lord rather than a blind burden. So ask yourself as you listen, when I call AYAT Al-KURSI great, do I mean its protection or do I mean its revelation? Do I let its words change my vision of God, not as distant concept, but as the ever-living, knowing one who meets me at every breath? Allahu la ilaha illa huwa, Allah, there is no deity except Him. These opening words are the heartbeat of AYAT Al-KURSI and the clearest, simplest doorway into T, a W letter 1E25 I Macron D. In them lies a claim so direct it leaves the soul no room to hide. Every object of love, hope, fear, and worship must be measured against this single reality. Begin with the name itself, the name Allah. This is not merely a label. It is the name that, in Islamic understanding, gathers and points to every perfect attribute of the divine. When the Qur'an says Allah, it is not offering a title among many. It is calling to the one whose being is unique, whose reality cannot be parceled into human categories. To stand before that name is to stand before the source of life, wisdom, and authority. Now hear the phrase that follows, there is no deity except Him. It is a refusal and a refuge at once. A refusal of anything that would share with God His right to be worshipped, idols of the heart, false securities, momentary gains that demand our ultimate trust. In a refuge, the soul emptied of false dependencies finds a single shelter that never fails. Imagine a person who has spent a lifetime building small altars, praise for position, trust in wealth, identity and reputation. Each altar initially gives warmth and meaning. Then life's storms come, loss, illness, betrayal, and those altars crumble. In that ruin, the words Allah, there is no deity except Him, stand like a living pillar. They do not erase the pain, but they redirect the heart. To whom will you turn when everything else falls away? This is the spiritual weight behind the Ismi Jalala and the declaration that follows. It is not theoretical theology, it is the map for living. For the companions, for the early believers, this phrase was the compass that oriented every action, how they worshipped, how they spent, how they faced trials. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught, he placed T-A-W letter 1E25 I macron D at the center of personal reform and communal life. The greatness of Ayat al-Kursi begins here. Before describing attributes, it demands allegiance. Reflection changes our standing before duties. When you pray, does your prayer flow from recognition of one who alone hears and sustains? When you act with patience, is it because you trust the ever-living, not because you simply hope for a better outcome? T-A-W letter 1E25 I macron D is not an abstract doctrine tucked into a book. It is the steadying truth that makes obedience meaningful and fear bearable. So breathe with these words now. Let them clear the cluttering altars of the heart. Ask yourself, which small deity have I been trusting, comfort, praise, safety, and how would my life shift if every choice began with the quiet certainty that there is no deity except him? Begin with a single breath, your own, felt in the quiet of a late night. It rises, it falls, it is fragile, numbered, dependent. That simple rhythm is the nearest thing you know to life. Now imagine a kind of life that is not counted, not fragile, not dependent on anything outside itself. In Ayat al-Kursi, the Qur'an gives us one of the clearest names for that reality, Al-Hayy, the ever-living. When the verse names Allah as Al-Hayy, it is asking us to move from what we feel toward what truly is. Our lives are marked by beginnings and endings, childhood that fades into age, strength that yields to weakness, wakefulness surrendered to sleep. Every creature carries within it a timetable. Even the sun, the moon, and the stars follow orders, change, and eventually cease in ways only their maker knows. Allah's life is categorically different. He does not begin, he does not end. He does not grow tired, nor does he rely on food, rest, or time. To call him Al-Hayy is to point to life that requires no cause, no support, no condition. This is not an abstract trivia. It is a reality that rearranges everything we believe about existence. If the one who gives life is himself ever-living, then every moment of our fragile existence is held, known, and sustained by a self-existent reality. Think of the comfort and the awe that follows. When loss arrives, a relationship fractured, a body weakened, a dream deferred, the knowledge that the ever-living holds the world steadies the heart. It does not remove pain, but it places pain within a reality that is under perfect care. For the companions and early believers, recognizing Allah as Al-Hayy was not merely theological. It was a refuge in exile, a lamp in hardship, a source of enduring hope when everything else vanished. Yet this name also humbles. If life's source is absolute and self-sufficient, then our clinging to temporary securities looks small and fragile. Worship, trust, obedience, these become responses to a life that never fails. So when you speak the name Al-Hayy, breathe its meaning in. Let it steady your fear and loosen your false dependencies. Ask yourself quietly, in whose life am I placing my ultimate trust, the life that fades or the ever-living who holds every moment? Begin with the quiet of a morning when the city is still sliding awake. A kettle clicks on, a child stirs, a phone vibrates with a distant message. In that small chain of events, you witness countless acts of sustaining. A pulse that keeps beating, air that keeps arriving in the lungs, light that returns at dawn. None of these continue by their own power. The Qur'an names the reality behind that continuity, Al-Qayyum, the one who sustains, maintains, and preserves all. To call Allah Al-Qayyum is to say that existence itself is a trust he upholds. Think of a tree, its leaves unfurl because a hidden network of roots draws water. Its life depends on soil, sun, seasons, an entire system patiently working together. Now imagine that every system, from the smallest cell to the largest galaxy, depends not on chance but on a sustainer who administers what is needed for things to continue. That is the meaning of Qayyumiyyah, the total moment-to-moment dependence of creation on the one who is independent of all. This truth changes how we feel about our daily anxieties. When bills arrive, when relationships fray, when plans fail, we often feel as if the world might tip because of our small failures. Yet Al-Qayyim reminds us that the universe is not fragile in the way our worries make it seem. The very breath you are taking is continually given. The order of morning and night continues whether you notice or not. That is not to minimize suffering. Pain is real and heavy, but to place it within a context, a reality constantly upheld by one who is attentive and able. For the companions and the early believers, this understanding was both humbling and empowering. It humbled them by revealing how little control they truly had. It empowered them by freeing them from illusion, allowing sincere trust, tawakkul, to grow. If the one who sustains all manages the cosmos, then our role becomes clear. Act with responsibility, but rest the outcome with the sustainer. So let this name sink in with your next breath. Notice how reliance on temporary structures, money, status, constant planning, can feel like building on moving sand. Ask yourself quietly, where am I placing my ultimate dependence today, on what can crumble, or on the one who sustains every moment of existence? Begin in the small hours of the night when the city exhales and even the busiest street seems to sleep. A mother sits by a child's bedside, eyes heavy, fingers tracing the blanket's edge. A student stares at a lamp, struggling to keep eyelids open. A guard leans against a post, trying to stay alert. These images are familiar. Our bodies know limits, our minds need rest, and the world itself follows a rhythm of wakefulness and sleep. Into that human pattern, the Qur'an places a sentence that arrests the heart. Neither drowsiness nor sleep overtakes him. It is a simple line, but its meaning rewires how we see the universe. Where we tire, he does not. Where we must pause to recover, he never pauses. Where our attention will waver, his attention remains perfect and uninterrupted. Think for a moment about the emotional weight of that truth. When fear enters at night, a phone call with bad news, a sudden illness, the ache of loneliness, our first instinct is to scramble for ways to secure ourselves. We gather checks, make plans, call loved ones. We try to keep watch against the tides of trouble. But beneath that scramble is a quieter, deeper reassurance. The one who knows every rustle, every groan, every hidden tear never slumbers. The world's care is not left to fragile, tired hands. The one who sustains it is vigilant in a way we cannot simulate. This verse is not meant to belittle human fatigue. It honors our limits. Sleep exists, rest is necessary, and weakness is real. Rather, it sets our weakness beside divine perfection so that our reliance is rightly placed. For the earliest believers who faced raids, exile, and loss, knowing that God's watch never slackened was a source of courage. They could sleep, work, and struggle knowing that ultimate vigilance watched over them. That knowledge steadied anxious hearts and turned fear into trust. There is also a moral mirror here. If God's awareness never tires, how will we live before such awareness? The verse invites humility. It reminds us that our hidden acts and whispered intentions are within the scope of the one who never sleeps. It invites sincerity. If our deeds are seen at every moment by a vigilant Lord, then let our worship and our kindness be sincere, not performed for show. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the world falls into rest, let the thought settle in your chest. The Creator's watchfulness is constant and perfect. In that thought, find comfort for your fears, strength for your weakness, and a quiet challenge. Will you let that awareness change the way you live when no one else is watching? Begin with a simple picture. A child drops a toy and it rolls across the floor. A farmer wakes before sunrise to tend a field. A satellite crosses the night sky, unseen but precise. These small scenes are stitched into a larger truth the Qur'an declares plainly. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. Those words are not a distant theological claim. They are an invitation to look at everything around us, the air we breathe, the cities we build, the stars above, and recognize a single ownership that is absolute. Ownership here is not the same as possession in human terms. When you buy a house or save money, you become its owner in a legal, temporary sense. But the verse asks us to consider a far deeper reality. Nothing truly belongs to us in the ultimate sense. Everything is entrusted to our care for a time. that idea changes how responsibility feels. If the world is ultimately owned by the Creator, then our role is not to hoard or dominate, but to steward wisely. The wealth in a market, the trust of a friend, the health of a child, these are not trophies proving our success. They are trusts placed in our hands. The way we manage them will be seen and accounted for by one who is the true owner. Feel the emotional weight of that reorientation. Pride softens, greed loses some of its charm. When a parent holds a newborn, the awe is different if they see that life not merely as mine, but as a trust to nurture. When a leader makes a public decision, the pressure to act justly grows when they remember that resources and people are ultimately entrusted by a higher authority. For the companions and early believers, this awareness shaped law, charity, and manners. It turned private wealth into public duty and personal power into service. This is not an argument to deny legitimate ownership or to remove human accountability. Instead, it places every human claim into a moral frame. You may use, but you are also responsible. The promise that everything belongs to the divine should comfort the weak, the homeless, the broken, the overlooked, because ultimate justice rests with the true owner. So let the phrase settle in your heart tonight. What do I treat as mine that is truly a trust? And how will I change my actions if I live with the conviction that nothing in this world is owned by me forever, but all is entrusted to my care? Who is there that can intercede with him except by his permission? These are not ornamental words tucked into the verse. They are a theological lifeline thrown to hearts caught between fear and hope. Begin by painting the scene we dread to imagine, the day of reckoning. Imagine a vast plain of standing souls, a hush so heavy it presses on the chest, and a crowd of voices each seeking mercy. In that moment, every human instinct reaches for help, for someone to stand before the sovereign and plead, "Let them pass, spare them, ease their account." That instinct is not shameful, it is human. But Ayat Al-Kursi corrects and reorders that instinct. Intercession is real, yes, but it is not independent. Nothing, no person, no saint, no idol, no practice can intercede except by the express permission of Allah. What does this mean in a practical, spiritual sense? First, it means we reject any belief that makes created beings a source of independent salvation. To think a created thing can, by its own right, relegate the divine decree is to blur the line between creator and creation. The Qur'an and the prophetic teachings make this clear. Intercession is granted and controlled by Allah alone. Even the greatest of beings, prophets, angels, the righteous, have no ability to intercede unless Allah wills it. At the same time, the doctrine affirms a merciful dimension in divine governance. The Prophet PBH taught that intercession will happen, that there will be pleadings and pardons, but only because Allah, in His wisdom and mercy, allows it. This is the balance. There is no blind fatalism, nor is there a license for false dependency. The believer is invited to cling to hope, but that hope must be rooted in the one who grants permission. Consider how this teaching would have sounded to the early community, those who had lost homes, families, dignity, or freedom at the hands of oppressors. They were given a God who is both just and merciful, a sovereign who judges but who also controls mercy. The companions were taught to seek the Prophet's intercession by asking Allah to grant it through him, not to regard the Prophet PBH as an autonomous mediator. Their supplications were grounded in humility. "O Allah, let your mercy prevail. Allow your servant, the Prophet, to intercede for us." That is theology that produces dignity, not dependence. Make the lesson personal. When you feel desperate before an exam, at the funeral of a loved one, at a crossroads of moral choice, ask, "Where am I placing my trust?" In rituals, charms, or personalities, or in the Lord who alone controls mercy and permits intercession? Our actions matter. Repentance, charity, sincere prayer, following the Prophet's way. These are the means by which we prepare for Allah's mercy, and with humility hope for intercession that only He may grant. End with this quiet challenge. Do you seek intermediaries because you fear God's judgment, or because you love and trust the one who alone gives mercy? Let your hope be shaped by the one who permits intercession, and let your life be the proof that you trust His justice and His mercy. He knows what is before them and what is behind them. These few words from Ayat Al-Kursi quietly dismantle one of the deepest human illusions, the illusion that parts of our lives remain unseen, unnoticed, or misunderstood. We live inside time. We remember our past with regret or pride. We fear our future with uncertainty. And in between, we carry private struggles that no one ever hears about. But Allah introduces himself here as the one whose knowledge surrounds us from every direction, what came before us, what lies ahead of us, and what moves silently inside our hearts. Picture the early believers in Mecca. Many of them accepted Islam in secret. Their faith was hidden behind closed doors, whispered in the darkness of their homes. They were afraid of families, tribes, and persecution. Yet Allah revealed to them that nothing about their condition was hidden from him. Their tears in the night, their trembling voices in prayer, their fear of tomorrow and pain of yesterday, all were already known to the one who says, "He knows what is before them and what is behind them." This knowledge is not cold surveillance. It is intimate, merciful awareness. Allah knows the past you cannot change, the mistake that still makes your heart tighten, the word you wish you could take back, the moment you lost your way. And he knows the future that keeps you awake at night, the illness you fear, the decision you are afraid to make, the outcome you cannot control. He knows what you will face before you even reach it, and he knows what you carry behind you even when you pretend you are strong. In the life of the Prophet FDFA, this truth was lived, not merely spoken. When he stood alone in letter 1E60 a Macron IF, rejected and wounded, bleeding in the dust. Allah already knew what that pain would produce in the future, generations of believers who would find strength in that moment. The Prophet FDFA could only see suffering in front of him. Allah already knew what lay behind it and what would come after it, and this is where the verse becomes deeply personal. Nothing in your life is invisible to Allah, not your quiet endurance, not your hidden repentance, not the good deed no one noticed, not the fear you never admitted aloud. Allah knows what is ahead of you, and he is already there, and he knows what is behind you, and he has not abandoned you because of it. So ask yourself gently tonight, if Allah already knows every chapter of my story, past and future, then why do I still carry my pain alone, instead of placing it before the one from whom nothing is hidden? They encompass nothing of his knowledge except what he wills. These words quietly return the human heart to its true size. We live in an age where knowledge feels limitless. A few clicks can open libraries, maps of the skies, and the deepest layers of the human body. And slowly, without realizing it, the heart begins to believe that understanding means control, and that knowing more means becoming independent. But Allah interrupts that illusion with a single sentence. They encompass nothing of his knowledge except what he himself allows. This truth was lived deeply by the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him. They were a people who desperately wanted guidance. They would gather around the Prophet, peace be upon him, listening carefully to every word, afraid of missing even a small teaching. They did not treat knowledge as personal achievement. They treated it as a gift that descended upon their lives. When new verses were revealed, you can imagine the silence in their gatherings, hearts fully present, eyes fixed. Not because they were curious, but because they understood that knowledge was arriving from beyond this world. Even the Prophet, peace be upon him, was commanded to say, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge." This alone teaches us something powerful. If the most guided human being on earth was taught to ask for knowledge, then how small must our own claim to understanding truly be? This verse reminds us that every skill you carry, every insight you possess, every ability to think, analyze, remember, and learn, it is not self-created, it is permission. Allah opens some doors of understanding and closes others. He allows one person to grasp wisdom through hardship, another through study, another through pain, and another through quiet reflection. And there are realities of his creation, his decree, and his unseen world that will always remain beyond human reach. And perhaps this limitation is mercy. Because not knowing everything protects the heart from arrogance. It teaches humility. It keeps the servant standing at the door of Allah, asking, learning, and submitting. So pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, when knowledge comes to you, do you thank the one who allowed you to receive it? Or do you quietly believe it was only your own intelligence that brought it to your hands? When we recite Ayat Al-Kursi, our hearts pause at a word that carries immense weight, kursi. But what exactly is this kursi? For centuries, scholars and companions have sought to explain it, and the answers point to a reality far beyond human imagination. Ibn Abbas, Arabic Rat, Arabic Dada, Arabic Yet, Arabic Khalif, Arabic Lam, Arabic Lam, Arabic Ha, Arabic Tain, Arabic Noon, Arabic Ha, Arabic Meme, Arabic Khalif, one of the most knowledgeable companions in the interpretation of the Qur'an, explained that the kursi is a manifestation of Allah's authority and majesty. Classical scholars described it as an immense creation that encompasses the heavens and the earth. Imagine for a moment a throne so vast that it stretches beyond the limits of space and time as we perceive it, yet remains under the dominion of a Lord whose essence cannot be contained. That is the kursi, a creation that marks the greatness and sovereignty of Allah, a symbol of His absolute knowledge and authority. The kursi is not like any throne we can visualize in human terms. It is not a seat where Allah sits or rests, for He is ever-living and self-sufficient. Rather, it represents His dominion over all that exists. The Prophet FDFA taught us that the kursi's greatness surpasses even the vastness of the heavens and the earth, a sign that divine authority is infinite, eternal, and unmatched. It is a marker of perfection, the perfect control, knowledge, and power of the one who sustains everything. Picture a universe so vast, each star, planet, and galaxy moving precisely according to divine command. Think of the ocean's tides, the cycles of life and death, the unseen currents in the wind, all operating under the authority of the kursi. And yet this immense creation, this symbol of absolute power, is still entirely under Allah's knowledge and care. The kursi is a reminder that what we see, what we measure, and what we control is but a fraction of Allah's total dominion. For the early believers, understanding the kursi inspired both awe and humility. It reminded them that they were part of a larger order, a world fully held and maintained by a sovereign who knows all things, seen and unseen. Their acts of worship, patience in trials, and hope in mercy were framed within this awareness that nothing escapes Allah's sight and all creation is sustained under His command. Tonight, when you recite Ayat Al-Kursi, pause at that word. Let it awaken awe in your heart. Ask yourself, how often do I live as though I control what I can, forgetting the vast kursi that truly upholds the heavens and the earth? And how would my heart change if I entrusted every worry, every joy, and every moment to the one whose authority stretches beyond imagination, the Lord of the Kursi? When we speak of the Kursi in Ayat Al-Kursi, many wonder, is it the same as the throne? To answer this, we must step carefully into the wisdom of the earliest scholars and companions. They made a clear distinction. The Kursi and the throne are not identical, though both reflect the greatness of the Creator. The Kursi, they explained, is immense, vast beyond human comprehension, encompassing the heavens and the earth. It is a sign of authority and knowledge, a symbol that the universe is sustained and governed under divine will. Yet the throne exists above the Kursi, greater still in magnitude and majesty. The throne represents the ultimate authority, the fullness of divine dominion, beyond even the scope of creation as we perceive it. In other words, if the Kursi measures the universe, the throne measures what lies beyond, a reality so vast that even imagining it stretches human understanding. Consider the early believers sitting in gatherings, learning these truths from the companions of the Prophet. Their hearts would expand with awe as they imagined the Kursi supporting all creation, yet their minds shivered at the thought of the throne above it, a reminder that every moment, every event, every secret thought exists within a reality larger than they could comprehend. The difference was not meant to confuse, but to inspire humility and wonder. It demonstrated that no matter how great creation appears, it is finite. Only Allah's majesty is infinite. This distinction carries a profound spiritual lesson. When we recognize the vastness of the Kursi, we see the scale of divine knowledge and care. When we remember the throne above it, we are reminded that creation's grandeur is only a reflection of the Creator's absolute greatness. The universe is immense, yet it rests in hands that are even greater, Our own worries, ambitions, and struggles shrink in that awareness. Fear turns into trust, and awe grows alongside gratitude. So pause for a moment and imagine it, a creation so vast it stretches beyond sight yet fully sustained, a reality above it, incomprehensible yet holding all in perfect order. Ask yourself, do I live in awareness of the Creator's majesty, or do I measure my world by human limits? How would my heart change if I truly understood that everything I see, touch, or strive for is resting on a foundation far greater than my imagination, when the Qur'an says that His Kursi extends over the heavens and the earth? It invites the believer to pause and reflect on a reality far beyond ordinary perception. Imagine standing on a quiet hill at night, watching stars scattered across the sky. Now realize that all of that, every star, every planet, every distant galaxy, rests within a creation held by a single, sustaining authority. And the Kursi that encompasses it all is far greater than even the vastness you can imagine. The companions of the Prophet would often contemplate this truth. They lived among deserts and cities under skies filled with sun and moon, yet the scale of the Kursi reminded them that the universe they saw was only a fraction of what exists. Their hearts would swell with awe, humility filling every thought. How small we are, how limited our understanding, how dependent every breath, every step, every moment truly is. This cosmic scale is not meant to terrify, but to awaken awareness. The Qur'an uses this image to show that human significance is measured not by control over the world, but by awareness of our dependence and responsibility. Every tree, every river, every creature, all are encompassed within the Kursi. Nothing slips beyond its reach, nothing is overlooked, and nothing exists independently of the one who holds it. For the early believers, this understanding shaped their worship and daily life. Fear of misguidance was tempered by trust, and pride in worldly success was softened by humility. They knew that their deeds, intentions, and struggles existed within a vast system fully under divine knowledge and care. Every prayer, every act of charity, every patient endurance was framed within this awareness. The Kursi holds everything, yet it allows human choice and effort to exist within its domain. So tonight, as you gaze at the sky, let the thought settle in your heart. The world you see and the one you cannot see all rests under a reality far greater than your mind can measure. Ask yourself quietly, how does knowing that the Kursi encompasses everything change the way I live, the way I trust, and the way I seek guidance? How small are my worries in the presence of such vast care? Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Every day, your body works tirelessly, your heart beats without rest, your lungs draw in air with every breath, your mind struggles to remember, plan, and act. Even a single day can leave you exhausted. Now imagine sustaining not one life, but billions of lives, countless creatures, planets, galaxies, and every particle in the universe. For us, this would be unimaginable, overwhelming, even impossible. And yet, the verse assures us, preserving all creation does not tire Him. The Creator's power is absolute. Nothing in the heavens or the earth adds weight to His ability, nothing can burden Him, and nothing ever diminishes His strength. Unlike humans who are limited by energy, time, and circumstance, the divine power is infinite, eternal, and effortless. Every sunrise, every tide, every breath of wind continues under His care, perfectly maintained without fatigue. The companions of the Prophet often reflected on this truth in moments of fear or struggle. When they faced hardship, exile, threats, or scarcity, they understood that the one who sustains the stars and the oceans also sustains them. Their hearts found comfort not in what they could control, but in the knowledge that absolute preservation is effortless for the Creator. This lesson is deeply personal for us today. How often do we worry, strain, or exhaust ourselves trying to hold our world together, our families, our work, our plans, as if it were all in our hands? This verse reminds us that ultimate care rests with the one who never tires. We are invited to act with responsibility, but to rest our hearts in trust. So pause tonight and reflect. If sustaining all creation is effortless for Him, what can you truly fear? Where can you place your trust, knowing that the universe and your life within it is held by power that never falters, never tires, and never fails? As we approach the final words of this verse, the Qur'an declares something simple yet profound. He is the Most High, the Most Great. Pause for a moment and let those words resonate. They are not mere titles, they are a complete description of majesty, authority, and transcendence. To be the Most High means that nothing can compare to him in status or elevation. No mountain, no sky, no empire, no creation reaches even a fraction of his grandeur. Imagine looking at the tallest peak, the vastest desert, the most brilliant star, and then realizing that all of it exists within the presence of a reality far above it, untouchable, untiring, infinite. That is the Most High, and yet, to be the Most Great encompasses more than elevation. Greatness implies power, might, and awe-inspiring authority. It is not a greatness measured by fear alone, but by perfection in every act of sustaining, creating, and governing. Every law of nature, every heartbeat, every orbit of a planet operates under his greatness. Nothing happens outside his will, yet all creation continues with perfect order, as if it were effortless. The companions of the Prophet often reflected on these attributes during moments of challenge and hardship. When enemies surrounded them, when scarcity tested them, when fear threatened their hearts, the awareness that Allah alone is the Most High and the Most Great brought peace. It reminded them that ultimate authority belongs to him, not to tyrants, not to wealth, not even to time itself. This awareness invites humility in us as well. Our ambitions, our achievements, our power, however impressive in human terms, are small in comparison. Yet it also brings comfort. The one who is the Most High and the Most Great watches over every detail of our lives. Nothing escapes his vision and nothing is beyond his control. So let these words settle in your heart tonight. Ask yourself, do I place my pride, my fears, and my hopes in fleeting human measures? Or do I rest them in the hands of the one who is truly above all and truly great? How would my life change if I walked each day aware that all creation is under the care of a greatness beyond imagination? And all elevation belongs only to him. As night falls and the world around us begins to slow, the mind often fills with worries, unfinished tasks, fears of the unknown, or lingering thoughts of the day. In those quiet moments, the companions of the Prophet found a source of peace, protection, and reassurance. Abu Hurairah, one of the closest companions, narrated a hadith that illuminates this practice. The Prophet instructed that reciting AYAT AL-KURSI before sleeping would ensure that no evil could approach until morning. Imagine a believer lying down after a long day in the city of Medina, the desert wind whispering through the streets, the stars above flickering faintly. In a home, a small lamp glows and a hand opens the Qur'an. As AYAT AL-KURSI is recited, the words are not just sounds but an embrace, a shield, and a reminder of divine authority. Shaitan, who seeks to mislead and disturb, cannot enter. The mind that was restless begins to settle, the heart that was anxious finds a quiet reassurance. Protection comes not from charms, not from locks or barriers, but from Allah himself. Scholars explain that this hadith is not merely about physical safety, but about spiritual security. The recitation acknowledges that ultimate control, knowledge, and preservation belong to Allah. Every soul, every moment, every whisper of thought is encompassed by his knowledge. The believer sleeps with a consciousness that the Creator's power extends even over the unseen, over dangers we cannot perceive, over forces that would otherwise disturb our peace. Consider the emotional impact on the companions and early generations. They faced threats, sickness, and scarcity, yet their nights were made secure through remembrance of the one who sustains everything. Their fear transformed into trust, their vulnerability into reliance on divine care. Each night became a spiritual lesson that true protection is not in what we can see, hold, or control, but in placing our trust in the eternal guardian. Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, pause and reflect. Close your eyes and let the verse flow in your mind. Feel the awareness that every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of rest is held by the one whose knowledge encompasses all. Ask yourself, am I seeking protection in fleeting things, or am I surrendering to the true source of safety and peace? How might my nights change if I truly believed that nothing can touch me except by His will, and that even darkness is within His care? Every day, the believer stands before Allah in prayer, bowing, rising and prostrating in complete submission. These moments are intimate conversations with the Creator, a time when the heart speaks directly to its sustainer. Yet, the practice does not end with the final words of the prayer. The Prophet taught that reciting Ayat Al-Kursi immediately after obligatory prayers brings immense spiritual benefit, a practice emphasized by both companions and scholars throughout history. Imagine a believer finishing the prayer, their forehead still warm from prostration, their heart still echoing with the words spoken moments ago. Now they recite Ayat Al-Kursi. With each verse, their awareness expands. The one who sustains the heavens and the earth, the one whose knowledge encompasses the seen and unseen, is near, attentive, and protective. It is as if the soul is being wrapped in divine light, reaffirmed in its faith and trust. The companions understood this deeply. For them, reciting the verse was not a ritual habit alone. It was a renewal of connection, a daily reminder that their lives, decisions, and actions rested within divine care. Scholars explain that this act strengthens the heart against forgetfulness, arrogance, and distraction. Every recitation becomes a gentle awakening, a spiritual refreshment, a daily revival of faith. This practice teaches us something timeless. Spirituality is not a one-time effort, but a daily journey. Each prayer is an opportunity to reconnect, and each recitation of Ayat Al-Kursi reinforces our understanding of Allah's majesty, mercy, and protection. It is a quiet affirmation: my faith is alive, my trust is renewed, and I am walking each day under the care of one who never tires. Pause for a moment and reflect. How often do I leave prayer without reaffirming my trust in Allah's knowledge and care? What difference might it make if each day ended with this conscious connection, reminding my heart that I am never alone and that my faith is constantly being renewed every morning? When a believer rises and every evening when they prepare for rest, the heart carries a choice: to live guided by awareness of the one who sustains all, or to drift in forgetfulness. Reciting Ayat Al-Kursi daily is more than ritual. It is a renewal of the core belief that shapes every action, every decision, and every thought: the belief in the oneness of Allah. Picture a companion of the Prophet sitting quietly after prayer, the dust of the day still settling around them. As their lips move through the words of the verse, their heart remembers that all power, all knowledge, and all control belong to Allah alone. This is not abstract knowledge, it is a force that transforms life. Actions, small and large, begin to align with this awareness. When a person truly understands that nothing exists independently of the Creator, their patience deepens, their fear diminishes, and their gratitude multiplies. For the early generations, this daily practice created a rhythm of faith. Every recitation reminded them that the one who governs the heavens and the earth also governs their lives. Decisions were made with humility, struggles faced with trust, and every blessing received with gratitude. Tawheed was not only a statement of belief, it was the lens through which life was lived. Today, the lesson remains the same. Each time we recite Ayat Al-Kursi, we have an opportunity to reset our hearts, reaffirm our trust, and strengthen our reliance on the Creator. It is a spiritual compass guiding us back when distraction, doubt, or worry threatens to take over. So pause and reflect. How often do my actions reflect the belief that Allah alone sustains all? If each day began with this awareness, how might my words, my work, and my decisions change? How different would my life feel if Tawheed were not only in my mind, but alive in every heartbeat? Life is filled with moments of uncertainty. From the smallest worries to the greatest trials, the human heart often trembles in fear and anxiety. Illness, financial strain, conflicts, or the unknown future can weigh heavily on the soul. In such moments, the believer turns to what has always been a source of reassurance: the words of Ayat Al-Kursi. Imagine a companion of the Prophet sitting alone under the starry desert sky. The cool night air brushes against their face, but inside, the heart is restless, troubled by events beyond their control. In that stillness, they recite Ayat Al-Kursi. With each word, their heart feels a subtle shift. Fear softens, anxiety fades, and a quiet confidence begins to bloom. The verse reminds them that the one who sustains the heavens and the earth is fully aware of their situation, fully capable of managing every detail, and never overwhelmed by the weight of creation. The companions and early believers understood this deeply. They faced hardships unimaginable to many today, famine, persecution, and exile, yet they found peace in surrendering to the one whose knowledge encompasses all and whose power is limitless. Recitation of AYAT Al-KURSI became a spiritual anchor, a source of trust, and a reminder that even when human effort falters, divine oversight remains constant. This lesson is timeless. When we face our own fears and trials, we often try to control everything with our limited means. But the verse teaches us to place our trust fully in the one who is never tired, never distracted, and never powerless. This is not a call to inaction, but a call to act with reliance, knowing that the outcome is in the hands of perfect wisdom. So pause and reflect, what fears am I carrying that weigh my heart? How might my perspective change if I truly believed that nothing escapes the knowledge of the one who sustains everything? Can I allow my trust in this reality to bring genuine peace, even amid trials that seem beyond control? In the shadow of such understanding, fear transforms into calm, and anxiety gives way to a heart at rest. The companions of the Prophet lived in a world filled with challenges, external threats, scarcity, and trials of every kind. Yet, in the midst of these hardships, their hearts were deeply connected to the Qur'an. AYAT Al-KURSI, with its profound declaration of divine knowledge, power, and protection, held a special place in their daily lives. Imagine Abu Bakr or Umar after a long day, walking through the streets of Medina, dust covering their sandals, the sun setting behind distant hills. Their hearts, though tired from work and concern for the community, would recite this verse. It was more than ritual, it was a source of strength, a reminder that the Creator who governs the heavens and the earth is always aware, always in control, and always preserving His creation. For the companions, the Qur'an was not only guidance, it was the anchor of their courage. Facing enemies, persecution, or personal hardship, they relied on its words to maintain patience, confidence, and trust. AYAT Al-KURSI reminded them that no trial could escape the knowledge of Allah, and no force could act without His permission. It was a spiritual shield, a compass for their hearts, and a source of clarity in moments of doubt. This connection was deeply personal. The verse shaped their actions, decisions, and even their speech. Each recitation reaffirmed faith and reminded them that their lives, though fragile and limited, existed within the care of infinite power and wisdom. Reflecting on this, we are invited to ask ourselves, how strong is my relationship with the Qur'an in daily life? Do its verses guide my actions, calm my fears, and renew my trust as they did for the companions? And can I too draw courage and certainty from these words, letting them shape not only my belief but the very way I live each day? AYAT Al-KURSI is a verse of unmatched majesty, a declaration of divine knowledge, power, and protection. Yet, throughout history, some have misunderstood it, treating it as a charm or a mechanical spell, reciting it without understanding, as if its words alone could act like a talisman. This mindset, common even among people with good intentions, has obscured the true purpose of the verse. Imagine a person carrying an object inscribed with the words, believing that its mere presence will protect them from all harm. They recite the verse hurriedly, without reflection, like a routine they must complete. The essence of the verse, its invitation to trust, to understand the oneness and greatness of the Creator, is lost. Their heart remains anxious, their faith superficial, and the connection with the Creator becomes mechanical rather than alive. The companions of the Prophet understood this clearly. Their recitation of the Qur'an was always accompanied by awareness, humility, and reflection. Knowledge of Allah's attributes was coupled with trust and surrender. Protection was not in the physical words themselves, but in the acknowledgement of the one whose knowledge encompasses the heavens and the earth. This was a balance of zikr, remembrance, and aqidah, correct belief. They knew that a word recited without understanding does not transform the heart. True spiritual power comes from comprehension, reflection, and reliance on Allah. This lesson is timeless. It reminds us that our relationship with the Quran cannot be reduced to superstition or habit. The verse must shape our hearts, inspire trust, and deepen understanding. Mechanical recitation without awareness is like walking through a magnificent garden blindfolded. The beauty exists, but the soul does not perceive it. Pause and reflect. When I recite sacred words, am I aware of their meaning, or am I relying on ritual alone? How might my life and my heart transform if every recitation of Ayat Al-Kursi was accompanied by understanding, reflection, and trust in the one who sustains all? Could this awareness turn my practice into genuine protection, peace, and spiritual growth? From the first revelation to the final verses, the Quran speaks with one central purpose: to guide humanity to the recognition of the one who created, sustains, and governs all things. In this light, Ayat Al-Kursi stands as a powerful encapsulation of the Quran's core message, a concise yet profound declaration of divine lordship, knowledge, and authority. Imagine a believer pausing after prayer, reflecting on the Quran's guidance. Every story, command, and promise echoes a single truth: Allah alone is worthy of worship. He alone sustains the heavens and the earth, and nothing occurs outside His knowledge or permission. Ayat Al-Kursi expresses this truth in its purest form. It is as if the verse holds a mirror to the entirety of the Quran, revealing its essence in a single, luminous reflection. For the companions and early generations, this understanding shaped their lives. The Quran was not a collection of rules to follow mechanically. It was a living guide pointing constantly to the one who is ever-living and all-sustaining. Each recitation of Ayat Al-Kursi reinforced this awareness. It reminded them that worship, obedience, and reliance are meaningful only when rooted in the recognition of Allah's complete authority and knowledge. The verse inspired awe, humility, and trust, shaping both the heart and the behavior. Today, the lesson remains the same. While the Quran contains guidance for every aspect of life, Ayat Al-Kursi invites believers to grasp the foundation beneath it all: the reality of Allah's lordship and oneness. It transforms our understanding from mere ritual into conscious submission and reliance, allowing the heart to internalize the Quran's central teaching in daily life. Pause and reflect. When I read the Quran, do I perceive the overarching truth it points to, or am I lost in details? How might my faith and my actions transform if every verse, every command, and every story were understood through the lens of divine lordship and oneness? Could recognizing this central message deepen my connection, my trust, and my purpose in life? As we reach the culmination of understanding Ayat Al-Kursi, let us pause and reflect on the ultimate reality that the verse points us to: the presence of Allah. The one who holds the heavens and the earth, the one whose kursi extends over all creation, and before whose throne every soul will ultimately stand. Life, in all its busyness and distraction, often pulls us away from this awareness. Yet the Quran, and especially this verse, reminds us that our existence is not without direction or purpose. Picture for a moment the final journey of a believer's life. The heart beats faster, the body grows weak, and the soul prepares to depart this world. In that crucial moment, every worldly possession, every fleeting achievement, and every moment of pride becomes insignificant. What remains is the consciousness of the one who sees all, knows all, and judges with perfect justice. Ayat Al-Kursi serves as a preparation for that moment, a daily reminder that nothing exists outside Allah's knowledge and nothing is hidden from His sight. For the companions, the awareness of this truth shaped their lives profoundly. Their courage, their patience, and their devotion were all anchored in the certainty that Allah's Kursi encompasses everything, that He is ever-living, ever-aware, and ever-powerful. When facing trials, they turned to Him. When making decisions, they sought His guidance. When performing acts of worship, they were fully present in the recognition of His greatness. The verse teaches that accountability is inevitable. Every word, every intention, every deed will return to its source. Standing before the Kursi and throne is not a distant concept. It is a reality we approach with every breath, every decision, and every reflection. Understanding this transforms fear into humility and humility into peace. The believer learns to surrender, to trust, and to rely completely on Allah, knowing that ultimate justice and mercy belong to Him alone. Now reflect personally. If I truly lived with the awareness that Allah's Kursi encompasses all creation, how would I spend my days? How would I treat my time, my wealth, and my relationships? Would my actions reflect sincere reliance on His knowledge and power, or would I remain distracted by the temporary and the trivial? Ayat Al-Kursi calls us to recognize the fragility of life, the certainty of accountability, and the necessity of aligning our hearts with the One who is ever-present and all-powerful. Let this final reflection serve as both a warning and a comfort. The One before whose Kursi we will stand is the same One who watches over our every moment now. Our worship, our trust, and our mindfulness can transform our lives today, so that when the ultimate meeting comes, we stand not in fear and despair, but in peace, humility, in recognition of the One whose knowledge and power are infinite.